Lucy pressed her face against the thick glass window as the transport ship approached Haven's Rest. The trading station looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, with curved arms reaching out in all directions. Hundreds of ships from different worlds docked at various ports, creating a colorful display of alien technology. "Remember what I told you about staying close," her mother said, adjusting the translation device on Lucy's collar. Dr. Beth Williams had brought her 8-year-old daughter on this research trip because Lucy's school was closed for the month. She hoped the experience would teach Lucy about the wider universe, though she worried about keeping her safe among so many alien species. The docking process took 20 minutes. Lucy watched in wonder as mechanical arms guided their small human vessel into position. Through the airlock, she could hear strange sounds, clicking, whistling, and low humming noises that came from creatures she had only seen in books. The main corridor of Haven's Rest stretched further than Lucy could see. The ceiling arched high above, decorated with glowing strips that provided light similar to Earth's sun. Gravity felt normal thanks to the station's rotation, but everything else reminded Lucy that she was far from home. Dozens of alien species walked, floated, and crawled through the corridor. Lucy saw tall, thin beings with feathered wings who had to duck to avoid hitting their heads. These were Averans, her mother had explained, who came from a world with low gravity. Their hollow bones made them excellent flyers but fragile in normal gravity. Near a food vendor, crystalline beings that looked like walking gemstones discussed prices in voices that sounded like wind chimes. These lithoids communicated through vibrations in their crystal bodies, and their translation devices turned those vibrations into words other species could understand. Most fascinating to Lucy were the Nebulans, gaseous beings who wore special containment suits to keep their form stable. They looked like colorful clouds with bright spots that might have been eyes. When they moved, their colors shifted like oil on water. "The marketplace is just ahead," Dr. Williams said, checking her research notes. She planned to study how different species interacted during trade negotiations. Human psychology was her specialty, but she wanted to see if similar patterns existed among aliens. The marketplace occupied the largest open area Lucy had ever seen. Hundreds of stalls and shops filled the space, selling everything from exotic foods to strange technologies. The noise was incredible. Thousands of voices speaking in dozens of languages, all filtered through translation devices that sometimes created odd delays or misunderstandings. Lucy followed her mother past stalls selling glowing fruits, metallic fabrics that changed color when touched, and small devices that seemed to bend light around themselves. One vendor, who looked like a cross between a spider and a tree, tried to sell them something that moved and blinked in its container. "No, thank you," Dr. Williams said politely, pulling Lucy along. They had been walking for about an hour when the screaming started. It began at the far end of the marketplace, near the section where livestock and exotic animals were sold. Lucy heard high-pitched shrieks from Averans, deep rumbling panic from the lithoids, and electronic warning sounds from Nebulan suits. Vendors began shutting down their stalls with frightening speed. Some abandoned their goods entirely and ran toward the exits. Lucy saw an Averand drop an armload of precious stones in its haste to fly away. A lithoid vendor's crystal body actually cracked as it tried to move faster than its species normally could. "What's happening?" Lucy asked, but her mother was already scanning the crowd for danger. The panic spread like ripples in a pond. Soon the entire section of the marketplace was emptying. Station security forces arrived, a mix of different species wearing identical blue uniforms. But they stopped at the edge of the affected area and began setting up barriers. "Stay here," Dr. Williams told Lucy, but curiosity had already taken hold of the 8-year-old. While her mother tried to question a fleeing vendor about the disturbance, Lucy slipped away and moved toward the now empty stalls. The abandoned marketplace section looked like a battlefield. Overturned tables and scattered merchandise created an obstacle course. Lucy climbed over a fallen display case and squeezed between two food carts that had been abandoned so quickly that alien delicacies still sizzled on their cooking surfaces. She found the source of the panic in a small clearing between several stalls. An enormous creature lay motionless on the metal floor. Lucy had seen dragons in her books and on educational videos, but nothing had prepared her for seeing one in person. This dragon was roughly the size of a horse, but built much more powerfully. Its limbs were thick and muscular, ending in claws that could probably cut through steel. But something was wrong with this dragon. Its scales, which should have been deep red or gold according to everything Lucy had learned, were pure white. Not the healthy white of snow, but a pale, sickly color that made the creature look almost ghostly. The dragon's breathing was shallow and irregular. Its massive head rested on the ground, and Lucy could see that its eyes were closed. Along its sides, strange burn marks marred the white scales, as if something had tried to damage the creature from the inside. Lucy heard voices behind her as more security personnel arrived. "Dangerous predator," one said in accented common. "How did it get past quarantine?" "Doesn't matter," another replied. "We need to destroy it before it wakes up." "Wait," said a third voice, deeper and more authoritative. "Look at the coloration. I've never seen an albino dragon before. Albino or not, it's still a dragon. One flame breath could kill dozens." Lucy looked back at the creature. She had studied dragons in school as part of her xenobiology lessons. They were apex predators from the Ember Worlds, capable of breathing fire hot enough to melt most metals. Their intelligence was debated among scientists, but their aggression was legendary. Most space stations and ships banned dragons entirely, but this dragon looked hurt, not dangerous. The burn marks suggested its fire-breathing ability might be damaged. Its pale color indicated sickness or poisoning. And something about the way it breathed reminded Lucy of her old dog Max when he had been sick with lung problems. "We should contact the Ember World authorities," one security officer suggested. "They'll just tell us to dispose of it," came the reply. "Ember dragons don't acknowledge albinos. They consider them defects." As Lucy listened to the debate, she noticed the dragon's breathing becoming even more labored. Whatever was wrong with it was getting worse. The security team continued their discussion about protocols and regulations, but none of them seemed willing to actually approach the creature. Lucy made a decision that would change her life forever. She stepped forward into the clearing. "Little human," one officer called out in alarm. "Get away from there." But Lucy was already kneeling beside the dragon's massive head, her small hand reaching out to touch the pale scales of its snout. Sirens blared throughout the marketplace section as more security forces rushed to contain what they assumed would be a bloodbath. Every alien species had legends about dragons, and none of those legends ended well for anyone who got too close. Lucy's small hand touched the dragon's snout, and the creature's breathing changed slightly. Not aggressive or threatening, but almost like a sigh of relief. The white scales felt warm under her palm, warmer than human skin, but not burning hot like the story said. "By the void," gasped an Avaran security officer, its feathers standing on end. "The beast will incinerate her." Dr. Williams pushed through the crowd of officers just in time to see her daughter's hand resting on the dragon's head. Her heart stopped for several seconds before training kicked in. As a xenobiologist, she knew that panicking would only make the situation worse. "Lucy," she called softly, trying to keep her voice calm. "Step back slowly, honey." But Lucy was studying the dragon's face. Up close, she could see that its scales weren't naturally white. Underneath the pale surface, she caught glimpses of what might have been red or gold coloration, as if something had drained the life from them. The burn marks along its body were more extensive than they had appeared from a distance. "Mom, it's hurt," Lucy said, not moving her hand. "Look at these marks." The dragon's eyes opened slightly at the sound of her voice. Instead of the golden or red eyes that dragons were supposed to have, these were pale blue, almost white. They focused on Lucy with obvious effort, and she saw intelligence there, not the mindless hunger that alien stories described. Captain Horrocks, the station's security chief, arrived with a squad of heavily armed officers. The four-armed reptilian commander had dealt with dangerous situations before, but never anything involving a dragon and a human child. "Dr. Williams," Horrocks said, his translator rendering his hissing speech into precise common. "Remove your offspring immediately. We have protocols for this situation." "What protocols?" Dr. Williams asked, moving closer but staying outside what she assumed was the dragon's attack range. "Elimination," Horrocks replied bluntly. "Dragons are Class 5 predators. They cannot be reasoned with or contained safely." Lucy looked up at the gathered crowd. Dozens of aliens watched from behind security barriers, some recording the scene with various devices. She could see fear in their postures, the way Avarans held their wings close to their bodies, how Lithoid's crystal forms had dulled to protective gray colors, and how several Nebulans had compressed their forms into tight, Defensive configurations? He's not dangerous, Lucy said, her hand still resting on the dragon's snout. Look, he can barely keep his eyes open. To prove her point, she gently stroked the dragon's scales. The creature made a sound that was part purr, part whimper. It was clearly in pain, but it made no move to harm the small human touching it. Impossible, muttered a lithoid observer. Dragons attack anything that approaches their resting areas. Maybe the poison has affected its aggressive responses, suggested an Avaran medic who had arrived with the security team. Poison? Dr. Williams asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her maternal fear. The medic bobbed its feathered head. We detected traces of unknown toxins in the air around the creature. Something potent enough to affect a dragon's metabolism. Lucy noticed that the dragon was trying to lift its head to look at her better. She helped support the massive weight, surprised by how light the creature seemed despite its size. Dragon bones were probably hollow like bird bones, which would explain how something so large could fly. What's your name? She asked the dragon, knowing it probably couldn't understand her. The dragon's mouth opened slightly and a small puff of smoke escaped. Not the raging fire that legends described, but barely enough heat to warm the air. The attempt seemed to exhaust the creature further. Its flame sacs are damaged, the Avaran medic observed from a safe distance. That explains the burn marks. Something has poisoned its ability to produce proper flame. Captain Horrocks activated his communicator. Maintenance, we need a biohazmat team in Sector 7. And contact the Emberworld Embassy. They need to know we have one of their creatures. Sir, came the reply. The Emberworld Embassy says albino dragons are not their responsibility. They suggest immediate disposal. Lucy felt anger rise in her chest. She had felt similar anger when kids at school picked on smaller children, or when adults ignored problems because they were inconvenient. You can't just kill him because he's different, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the silent marketplace. Child, Captain Horrocks said, trying to sound gentle. This creature is suffering. Ending its pain may be the kindest option. No, Lucy said firmly. Mom, you're a doctor. Can't you help him? Dr. Williams looked at her daughter, then at the dragon, then at the crowd of aliens waiting for her response. Her training was in psychology, not veterinary medicine, but she had studied enough biology to understand basic anatomy and toxicology. I would need to know what kind of poison we're dealing with, she said slowly, and I would need access to medical equipment. The station has a full medical facility, the Avaran medic said, but it's designed for registered species. We have no protocols for treating dragons. Then we make new protocols, Lucy said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. The dragon made another soft sound and managed to raise its head enough to look directly at Lucy. Those pale blue eyes held her gaze for several seconds, and she felt a strange sensation, as if the creature was trying to communicate directly with her mind. Images flashed through her thoughts, not her own memories, but something else. She saw vast red mountains under alien stars, caves filled with warm light, and other dragons with normal coloration flying together in complex formations. But she also saw rejection, loneliness, and the pain of being different. He understands us, Lucy said, tears forming in her eyes. He knows what you're saying about killing him, and he's scared. Dr. Williams saw the expression on her daughter's face and recognized it. Lucy had the same look when she had insisted on caring for injured animals back on Earth. The same determination that had driven her to nurse a baby bird back to health, or to sit with their old dog through his final illness. Horrocks, Dr. Williams said, give me 6 hours. If I can't stabilize the creature's condition in that time, you can proceed with your protocols. The security chief's 4 arms gestured in what might have been frustration. Doctor, the liability alone will be my responsibility, Dr. Williams finished. I'm a licensed xenobiologist, and this could be an unprecedented opportunity for interspecies medical research. Lucy smiled up at her mother, her hand still gently stroking the dragon's scales. Thank you, Mom. The dragon's eyes closed again, but its breathing seemed a little steadier. Whatever connection had formed between the small human girl and the injured predator, it appeared to be helping both of them find strength they didn't know they had. 3 hours had passed since Dr. Williams had been granted permission to help the dragon. During that time, Lucy had not left the creature's side, despite repeated attempts by various officials to move her to a safer location. The marketplace section had been completely evacuated, except for essential personnel and the small human family. Emergency barriers surrounded the area, and medical equipment had been brought in from the station's main hospital. Dr. Williams worked with an Avaran medic named Chirp and a lithoid scientist called Resonance to analyze the toxins in the dragon's system. Lucy sat cross-legged beside the dragon's head, one hand resting on its snout while the other held a water bottle. Every few minutes she would tilt a small amount of water into the creature's mouth. The dragon seemed to understand what she was doing and would swallow carefully. "The poison is definitely artificial," Dr. Williams reported to Captain Horrocks, who monitored the situation from a safe distance. "It's designed specifically to target neural pathways that control flame production in dragons." "Smugglers?" Horrocks asked, "Most likely. A dragon that can't breathe fire would be much easier to transport and sell illegally." Lucy listened to their conversation while studying the dragon's face. She had started calling him Snow in her mind, though she wasn't sure why. The name just seemed to fit his pale appearance and gentle demeanor. "Snow," she whispered, and the dragon's eyes opened immediately. The response surprised her. She had said the name quietly, but Snow had reacted as if she had called out loudly. His pale blue eyes focused on her face with an intensity that made her feel like he was looking directly into her thoughts. "Mom," Lucy called. "I think he likes the name Snow." Dr. Williams looked up from her analysis equipment. Over the past few hours, she had watched her daughter interact with the dragon in ways that defied everything science knew about the species. Dragons were supposed to be solitary, aggressive, and territorial. They certainly weren't supposed to form emotional bonds with aliens, especially not with children. "Lucy, try saying something else to him," Dr. Williams suggested. "Hi, Snow," Lucy said in a normal voice. "How are you feeling?" The dragon's eyes brightened slightly and he made a soft rumbling sound deep in his chest. It wasn't quite a purr, but it seemed to indicate contentment or recognition. Chirp, the Avaran medic, had been taking readings with various sensors throughout their treatment session. "Dr. Williams, you should see this," she said, her translator making her musical voice sound urgent. Dr. Williams joined Chirp at her monitoring station. "What is it?" "The dragon's stress hormones decrease significantly whenever your daughter speaks to him. His heart rate stabilizes and his breathing improves. It's as if her voice has actual healing properties." "That's impossible," Resonance chimed in, his crystal body reflecting the medical equipment's lights. "Vocal therapy is not effective across species barriers, but the evidence was clear in the data." When Lucy was silent, Snow's vital signs showed distress and pain. When she spoke, sang, or even hummed, all his biological indicators improved. Lucy had discovered this effect on her own, and had been keeping up a steady stream of conversation for the past hour. She told Snow about her home on Earth, describing trees and oceans and animals he had never seen. She talked about her school, her friends, and her favorite books. "I have a dog named Max," she was saying. "Well, I had a dog. He got old and died last year. But he was really smart, like you. He could tell when I was sad and would come sit with me." Snow made another soft sound, and Lucy felt that strange sensation again, as if images were being shared directly with her mind. This time she saw caves filled with warm light, but they were empty. She sensed loneliness so deep it made her chest hurt. "You miss your family," she said, understanding flooding through her. Snow's eyes widened, and the mental connection grew stronger. Lucy saw more images, other dragons turning away from Snow because of his white scales, driving him from their nests and territories. She saw him wandering alone through space, eventually being captured by beings in dark ships who hurt him when he tried to use his flame. Tears ran down Lucy's cheeks as she experienced Snow's memories of pain and rejection. But she also sensed something else, hope. For the first time in his life, someone had approached him without fear, had touched him with kindness instead of violence. "Dr. Williams," Captain Horrocks' voice crackled through the communicator. "We're receiving some unusual reports from other sections of the station." "What kind of reports?" Dr. Williams asked, not looking up from her work. "Several species are asking about the dragon. Not complaints, inquiries. They want to know if it's really true that a human child is caring for it." Dr. Williams paused in her analysis. "Why would they be interested?" "Unknown. But word is spreading throughout the station. Some are calling it unprecedented." Lucy wasn't paying attention to the adult conversation. She had discovered that if she placed both hands on Snow's head and concentrated, the mental connection became even clearer. It wasn't telepathy exactly, more like shared emotions and simple concepts. Through this connection, she learned that Snow wasn't naturally albino. His white coloration was the result of genetic modification done long ago by his ancestors. Albino dragons had been created for a specific purpose, though Snow didn't understand what that purpose was. He only knew that other dragons rejected him for being different. "You're not broken," Lucy told him firmly. "You're just special in a different way." Snow's purring sound grew stronger, and for the first time since they had met, he managed to lift his head without Lucy's help. The movement was slow and obviously painful, but it represented significant improvement from his earlier condition. "The antidote is working," Chirp reported excitedly. "His neural pathways are beginning to regenerate." "How much longer until he's fully recovered?" Dr. Williams asked, unknown. "We're dealing with unprecedented biology here, but the toxin levels are dropping steadily." Lucy felt Snow's gratitude through their connection, but also something else: worry. He was concerned about what would happen when he recovered. Where would he go? What would happen to the small human who had saved his life? "Don't worry about that now," Lucy said, somehow understanding his concerns. "We'll figure something out." Snow settled his head back down, this time resting it gently against Lucy's leg. The gesture was clearly intentional, a sign of trust and affection that made several of the observing aliens gasp in amazement. Captain Horrocks approached the medical area, staying just outside the established safety perimeter. "Dr. Williams, I need to inform you that word of this situation has reached the Galactic Council. They're sending observers." "Observers?" Dr. Williams looked concerned. "Representatives from several major species. They want to study this interaction between your daughter and the dragon. Apparently, this is the first recorded case of a human successfully communicating with a Class 5 predator." Lucy looked up from where she sat with Snow. "Are we in trouble?" "No, child," Horrocks replied. "But you may have started something much larger than any of us anticipated." Snow made a questioning sound, and Lucy felt his confusion through their mental link. She couldn't explain galactic politics to him, but she could share her own feelings of determination and protectiveness. "Whatever happens," she told him, "I won't let anyone hurt you again." Snow's pale blue eyes met hers, and in that moment, Lucy realized that she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for: a friend who understood what it felt like to be different, and who needed her as much as she needed him. Dr. Williams had been analyzing the toxin samples for 6 hours when she made a discovery that changed everything. The poison affecting Snow wasn't just any illegal substance, it was void sap, one of the most dangerous and expensive bioweapons in known space. "This doesn't make sense," she said to Chirp and Resonance, who had been helping with the analysis. "Void sap costs more than most ships. Why would smugglers use something so valuable to disable a single dragon?" Chirp's feathers ruffled with concern. Perhaps the dragon was more valuable than we assumed. Resonance's crystal body chimed thoughtfully. Or perhaps the dragon was not the intended target, but witnessed something it should not have seen. Dr. Williams felt a chill run down her spine. If Snow had been poisoned to silence him rather than capture him, it meant he might still be in danger. Lucy had fallen asleep leaning against Snow's side, her small hand still resting on his scales. The dragon had improved dramatically over the past few hours, though he was still weak. His breathing was steady now, and some color had begun to return to his scales, not the pure white of before, but hints of deep gold underneath. Captain Horrocks approached with a data pad in one of his 4 hands. "Dr. Williams, we've completed our investigation into how the dragon arrived on the station." "What did you find?" "Security footage shows a private cargo ship dumping what appeared to be a large container in the waste disposal section 3 days ago. The container was damaged, and the dragon must have crawled out and made its way to the marketplace." Dr. Williams studied the footage on Horrocks's datapad. The ship was unmarked, but its design suggested it was built for speed rather than cargo capacity. "Do we know who owns the ship?" "The registration was falsified, but we tracked its departure vector. It came from the Outer Rim territories, specifically from a system known for illegal trade operations." Lucy stirred in her sleep, and Snow immediately turned his head to check on her. The protective gesture wasn't lost on the observing aliens. Several species had sent representatives to study the unprecedented bond between human and dragon, and all of them were taking detailed notes. "The bond appears to be strengthening," observed Dr. Kess, a tall, thin being from the Galactic Council's Xenobiology Department. "Both subjects show increased stress when separated, even briefly, Is that normal for dragons? Asked Dr. Williams, unknown. Dragons rarely interact peacefully with other species. This is our first opportunity to study their social behaviors. Lucy woke up as voices grew louder around the medical area. She immediately checked on Snow, who responded to her touch with that now familiar purring sound. "How are you feeling?" she asked him. Through their mental connection, Lucy sensed that Snow was stronger but worried. Images flashed through their link. Dark ships, cages, and other creatures in pain. Snow had seen something terrible before being poisoned. Something that still frightened him. "Mom," Lucy called. "I think Snow knows about other animals being hurt." Dr. Williams joined her daughter beside the dragon. "What do you mean?" "He's showing me pictures in my head. There were other creatures on the ship that dumped him. They were in cages and looked sick." Captain Horrocks heard this exchange and immediately activated his communicator. "Security. We need to track all cargo movements from that unmarked vessel. If there's an illegal animal trade operation, we need to find it." Snow struggled to lift his head higher and made a series of low sounds that weren't quite roars. Through their connection, Lucy felt his urgency and determination. "He wants to help find the other animals," Lucy translated. "He knows where they might be taken." "The dragon can provide intelligence?" Dr. Kess asked, clearly fascinated. "I think so, but he's still too weak to travel." Dr. Williams made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "Then we'll have to bring the investigation to him." Over the next 2 hours, Captain Horrocks' security team set up a mobile command center in the marketplace section. They brought in star charts, trade route data, and intelligence reports about illegal animal trafficking in the region. Lucy served as translator between Snow and the investigators. The process was slow and sometimes confusing, since the mental connection relied more on emotions and images than words, but gradually they pieced together what Snow had experienced. He had been captured near his home world not by dragon hunters, but by accident. The smugglers had been raiding a medical research facility that was conducting illegal experiments on various species. Snow had been investigating strange sounds and smells near his territory when he stumbled into their operation. He saw them loading cages onto their ship, Lucy explained, her face pale from the disturbing images Snow was sharing. Lots of different animals, all of them hurt or sick. "Did he see where they were taking them?" Horrocks asked. Lucy concentrated on the connection. Snow's memories were painful, but he forced himself to share them. "A big station, bigger than this one. It's hidden in an asteroid field. They have laboratories there. Resonance's crystal body darkened to a deep purple, indicating alarm. That matches intelligence reports about a rogue research facility in the Titan Belt. We've been trying to locate it for months." "Why haven't you found it?" Dr. Williams asked. "The asteroid field interferes with most scanning equipment. We would need someone who had actually been there to guide us." All eyes turned to Snow, who was listening to the conversation with obvious intelligence. The dragon made a decisive sound and tried to stand up. "He wants to help," Lucy said, "but he's still too weak." Chirp checked her medical readings. "The antidote has neutralized most of the void sap, but full recovery will take several more days." "We might not have several days," Horrocks said grimly. "If these smugglers realize their operation has been discovered, they'll relocate." Lucy felt Snow's frustration through their mental link. He desperately wanted to help the other creatures he had seen, but his body wasn't ready for the strain of space travel. Dr. Kess stepped forward. "There might be another option. If the dragon can share his memories clearly enough, we could create a navigation profile from his experiences." "Is that possible?" Dr. Williams asked, theoretically. "We would need detailed sensory data, what he saw, heard, and felt during his time on the smuggler's ship." "But the process would be exhausting for him." Lucy looked into Snow's pale blue eyes. Through their connection, she felt his determination and courage. Despite everything he had suffered, he was willing to endure more to help others. "He'll do it," she said, "but I need to stay with him. The connection works better when I'm touching him." "Absolutely not," Dr. Williams said immediately. "The memory extraction process can be dangerous." "If something goes wrong, Mom, he needs me," Lucy interrupted. "I can feel how scared he is. But he's brave enough to try if I'm there to help him." Snow made a soft sound and gently nudged Lucy's hand with his snout. The gesture clearly showed his agreement with her assessment. Dr. Kess consulted with her colleagues before speaking. The procedure would require the child to maintain physical contact with the dragon throughout the memory extraction. There are risks, but her presence does seem to stabilize the subject's responses. Captain Horrocks considered the options. In the distance, his security teams were preparing ships for a search operation. But without better intelligence, they would be searching blindly through dangerous asteroid fields. How long would the extraction take? He asked. Several hours, and we would need to begin soon, while the memories are still fresh. Lucy squeezed Snow's snout gently. We can do this, she told him through their mental link. Together. Snow's response came as a wave of gratitude and determination. For the first time in his life, someone believed in him and trusted him to help others. He wouldn't let Lucy down, no matter how much the memory extraction might hurt. Dr. Williams looked at her daughter's determined face and realized that trying to protect Lucy from this experience might actually cause more harm than allowing her to help. Her daughter had already proven she could handle situations that would terrify most adults. All right, she said finally, but I'm monitoring both of them throughout the entire procedure. At the first sign of distress, we stop. Lucy smiled and hugged Snow's massive head. Did you hear that? We're going to help save your friends. Snow's purring grew stronger, and for the first time since his ordeal began, Lucy sensed hope flowing through their connection. They had work to do. The memory extraction procedure began at dawn. Station time. Dr. Kess had assembled a team of specialists from 3 different species, each bringing unique technologies to help capture and translate Snow's memories into useful navigation data. Lucy sat beside Snow's head, both her hands resting on his snout as various sensors were positioned around them. The dragon had grown stronger overnight, and his scales now showed definite patches of gold beneath the artificial white coating caused by the poison. Remember, Dr. Williams said, checking the medical monitors one more time, if either of you feels overwhelmed, we stop immediately. Lucy nodded and looked into Snow's pale blue eyes. Ready? She asked through their mental connection. Snow's response came as a wave of nervous determination. He was afraid of reliving the painful memories, but he was more afraid of what might happen to the other captive creatures if they didn't act quickly. Dr. Kess activated the memory extraction equipment, beginning sensory capture. Lucy, try to experience what Snow experienced, but don't lose yourself in his memories. Remember that you're safe here. The mental connection between Lucy and Snow suddenly became much stronger than before. Instead of receiving vague images and emotions, Lucy found herself experiencing Snow's memories as if they were her own. She was flying through space, following strange energy readings toward a small research station on an uninhabited planet. The facility was hidden in a valley between 2 mountain ranges, camouflaged to look like natural rock formations. Snow had been curious about the unusual smells and sounds coming from the facility. His species had natural instincts to investigate anything that might threaten their territory, even though this planet was far from his home world. Through Snow's enhanced senses, Lucy experienced the approach to the facility. She could smell fear, pain, and chemicals that made her stomach turn. She could hear distress calls from dozens of different species, all crying out in their own languages for help that wasn't coming. I'm getting clear sensory data, Dr. Kess reported. The dragon's memory is remarkably detailed. Lucy experienced Snow's shock and horror as he discovered what was happening inside the facility. Creatures from across the galaxy were being held in small cages, subjected to experiments that were obviously causing them agony. Some were being injected with unknown substances. Others were having parts of their bodies surgically removed for study. The worst part was seeing other dragons among the captives. These weren't albinos like Snow, but normal red and gold dragons who had been captured and were being tortured for their flame-producing organs. Snow had tried to break into the facility to free the captives, but the smugglers had been prepared for dragon attacks. They had weapons designed specifically to neutralize dragon abilities, including gas that disrupted flame production and neural nets that caused intense pain. They were ready for him, Lucy said, tears streaming down her face as she experienced Snow's capture. They knew dragons would come to investigate. The memory shifted to Snow's time aboard the smuggling ship. Lucy felt his claustrophobia and despair as he was locked in a cargo hold with several other creatures. She met them through Snow's perceptions, a family of small, furry beings who communicated through touch, a crystalline creature similar to resonance but much younger, and a being made of living energy that was slowly dying in containment. All of them had been captured from the illegal research facility. The smugglers were transporting them to a larger operation hidden in an asteroid field, where the experiments would continue on an even larger scale. The asteroid facility, Dr. Kess said urgently. Can you see the location? Lucy concentrated on Snow's memories of the journey. Through the dragon's enhanced spatial awareness, she experienced the complex route through the asteroid field. Snow had memorized every turn, every landmark, driven by his determination to someday return and rescue the others. It's like a maze, Lucy reported. The asteroids move in patterns and you have to time your approach perfectly or you'll crash. The extraction equipment captured every detail of Snow's navigational memories, building a three-dimensional map of the route to the hidden facility. But the process was exhausting both Lucy and Snow. Their stress levels are rising, Dr. Williams warned. How much more do we need? Just the facility layout, Dr. Kess replied. If we can understand the internal structure, rescue teams will know where to look for captives. Lucy pushed deeper into Snow's memories, experiencing his brief time inside the asteroid facility before he had been dumped on Haven's Rest. The hidden station was much larger than it appeared from outside, built into the hollow core of a massive asteroid. Hundreds of laboratories filled multiple levels, each containing creatures from different worlds. But Snow's memories also revealed something unexpected. In the deepest levels of the facility, he had sensed something familiar: other albino dragons. There are more like you, Lucy whispered to Snow through their connection. Snow's emotional response was so strong it nearly broke Lucy's concentration. He had spent his entire life believing he was alone, rejected by his own species for being different. The possibility that others like him existed was almost too wonderful to believe. I'm reading massive emotional spikes, Chirp warned. The dragon's heart rate is becoming irregular. Dr. Williams reached for the emergency shutdown, but Lucy held up one hand. Wait, he's not in distress, he's hopeful. Let him show me the rest. Through Snow's memories, Lucy saw the truth about albino dragons. They weren't genetic defects or accidents. They were part of an ancient subspecies that had been created thousands of years ago to serve as bridges between different species. Their modified genetics allowed them to form mental connections with other forms of life, making them natural diplomats and peacekeepers. But the regular dragon population had feared and rejected this ability, driving the albino dragons into hiding. Most had been killed or had died alone over the centuries. Only a few dozen remained, and many of them were now captives in the asteroid facility. They're the key to everything, Lucy realized. The smugglers aren't just selling them as exotic pets. They're using their connection abilities for something else. Dr. Kess leaned forward. What kind of connection abilities? Lucy struggled to translate what she was learning through Snow's racial memories. Albino dragons can link minds with other species. The smugglers are using them to control the other captives, to make them cooperate with the experiments. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled scientists. If criminals had found a way to weaponize natural telepathic abilities, the implications for galactic security were enormous. We have enough data, Dr. Kess announced, shutting down extraction. As the equipment powered down, Lucy felt the mental connection with Snow return to its normal, gentler level. Both of them were exhausted, but Snow's eyes now held something they hadn't before: hope. The rescue mission launches in 2 hours, Captain Horrocks announced. We'll have 4 ships and a full security team. I want to go with them, Lucy said immediately. Absolutely not, Dr. Williams replied. You've done enough. But Snow struggled to his feet for the first time since his arrival on the station. He was still weak, but his determination was clear. Through their mental link, Lucy felt his desperate need to help rescue the other albino dragons. He needs to go too, Lucy said. Without him, the rescue team won't be able to communicate with the albino dragons. They'll be too scared to trust strangers. Dr. Kess consulted her readings. The dragon's physical condition has improved dramatically. The antidote has neutralized all traces of the void sap, and his neural pathways have regenerated completely. Snow took a few shaky steps, then managed a small burst of flame. Not the pale smoke of before, but actual fire tinged with gold. His natural abilities were returning. Please, Lucy said to her mother, those creatures are counting on us, and Snow needs to know that his family is safe. Dr. Williams looked at her daughter, then at the dragon who had somehow become part of their lives in just 2 days. She had spent years studying the psychology of different species, but she had never encountered a bond like the one between Lucy and Snow. "If you go," she said finally, "I go too, and we follow every safety protocol the security team establishes." Lucy hugged her mother, then wrapped her arms around Snow's neck. "We're going to bring them home," she promised through their mental connection. Snow's response came as pure gratitude and love, emotions so strong they brought tears to Lucy's eyes. For the first time in his life, Snow wasn't alone. He had a friend who understood him, and together they were going to save his people. The rescue mission would be dangerous, but Lucy knew they would succeed. She and Snow had already proven that sometimes the most unlikely friendships could overcome the greatest obstacles. The rescue mission to the asteroid facility succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Using Snow's detailed memories, the security team navigated the treacherous asteroid field and infiltrated the hidden research station. They found over 300 captive creatures from dozens of different species, including 12 albino dragons who had been imprisoned for years. But the real discovery came when Lucy first touched one of the other albino dragons. The moment her hand made contact with a dragon called Starweaver, every albino dragon in the facility began to glow with soft golden light. The connection that Lucy had formed with Snow suddenly expanded, linking her mind to an entire network of telepathic consciousness that had been dormant for centuries. Through this expanded connection, Lucy learned the true history of the albino dragons. They weren't outcasts or genetic accidents. They were the descendants of an ancient peacekeeping force that had once maintained harmony between all the species in the galaxy. They were created to be bridges, Lucy explained to the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council 3 weeks later. She sat in the Great Assembly Hall on Haven's Rest, with Snow beside her and 11 other albino dragons arranged in a semicircle around them. Thousands of years ago, when the different species first encountered each other, there were terrible wars, Lucy continued, translating the collective memories that the dragons shared with her. Entire worlds were destroyed because different species couldn't understand each other. Ambassador Thex, a elderly Avaran with silver-tipped feathers, leaned forward in her perch. "Our historical records mention the time of silence when interstellar communication ceased for nearly a century, but we assumed it was due to technological failures." Snow made a soft sound and Lucy nodded as his thoughts joined hers. It wasn't technology that failed. It was trust. Every species retreated to their home worlds because they were afraid of the others. Dr. Kess, who had been studying the albino dragons since the rescue, added her findings to Lucy's translation. The albino dragons were genetically modified to serve as living translators, not just of language but of emotions, intentions, and cultural concepts that normal translation devices couldn't handle. "They ended the wars by helping everyone understand each other," Lucy said. "But once peace was established, the regular dragons became jealous of the special abilities their albino relatives possessed." Starweaver, the eldest of the rescued albino dragons, shared a particularly painful memory through the network. Lucy experienced the rejection and exile that had driven the albino dragons into hiding, and the gradual loss of their peacekeeping role as the galaxy forgot they had ever existed. Over time, people stopped believing in the old stories, Lucy translated. The albino dragons became myths, then legends, then were forgotten entirely. Most of them died alone, never knowing there were others like them. Captain Horrocks, who had been promoted to Chief of Galactic Security after the successful rescue mission, spoke from his position at the council table. "The criminal organization we destroyed was not just conducting illegal experiments. They were trying to weaponize the dragon's telepathic abilities to create a form of mind control. The implications of this revelation had sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. If criminals could force telepathic beings to manipulate other species' thoughts and emotions, no government or organization would be safe from infiltration. But they failed," Lucy said with a smile, "because they didn't understand how the connection really works. It can't be forced or weaponized. It only works when there's trust and friendship." To demonstrate, Lucy placed her hand on Snow's head and asked him to share his current thoughts with the assembly. Through the translation equipment, every species in the room heard Snow's voice for the first time. Not roaring or threatening, but speaking with intelligence and compassion about his hopes for the future. "I wish for my people to remember their purpose, Snow's translated voice said. "We were created to help others understand each other, not to be feared or hidden away. The small human Lucy has shown us that friendship can exist between any species, if both sides are willing to trust." The reaction from the assembly was immediate and profound. Representatives from species that had viewed dragons as monsters suddenly found themselves listening to philosophical thoughts about peace and cooperation. Several Averans were openly weeping, their feathers displaying colors of deep emotion. Ambassador Thex stood on her perch. The Averan Confederation formally requests that the albino dragons consider resuming their ancient role as peacekeepers. We have several territorial disputes that could benefit from their mediation. Similar requests followed from other species. The Lithoids wanted help resolving trade conflicts. The Nebulans asked for assistance in communicating with a newly discovered species that seemed immune to traditional translation methods, but the most significant moment came when representatives from the Ember Worlds, the home of the regular dragon species, approached the assembly platform. General Fireborn, a massive red dragon who served as the Ember World's military commander, had to duck low to fit through the assembly hall's entrance. His appearance caused immediate tension, as many species expected conflict between the regular dragons and their albino relatives. Instead, General Fireborn approached Snow and performed a gesture that Lucy recognized from Snow's racial memories, the ancient dragon ritual of apology and respect. "I speak for all dragons of the Ember Worlds." Fireborn's translated voice rumbled through the hall. "We have learned of the crimes committed against our albino brothers and sisters, and of their true purpose. We formally apologize for centuries of rejection and ask for their forgiveness." Snow stood and walked slowly toward the much larger dragon. For a moment the hall was silent as everyone wondered what would happen when the two dragons met. Snow touched his snout to Fireborn's, and golden light flowed between them. Through the telepathic network, Lucy felt Snow sharing not anger or resentment but understanding and forgiveness. The connection spread to all the albino dragons present, creating a moment of healing that had been thousands of years in the making. "Family," Snow said simply, and Fireborn's deep rumble of agreement needed no translation. Dr. Williams, who had been observing from the gallery, felt tears on her cheeks as she watched her daughter facilitate this historic reconciliation. Over the past month, Lucy had become something unprecedented, the first human to serve as a bridge between telepathic and non-telepathic species. The Galactic Council's final decision was unanimous. The albino dragons would be granted full recognition as a diplomatic species, with the authority to mediate conflicts between other civilizations. A new academy would be established on Haven's Rest to train both dragons and interested members of other species in the arts of telepathic communication and conflict resolution. Lucy was offered the position of the Academy's first human instructor, despite being only 8 years old. Her unique ability to connect with the albino dragons made her invaluable in helping other species understand how the telepathic network functioned. "What do you think?" Dr. Williams asked her daughter as they stood on Haven's Rest's observation deck, watching the rescued creatures being reunited with their families. Lucy looked out at the ships from dozens of different worlds, all gathered to witness this historic moment. Snow stood beside her, his scales now fully returned to their natural gold color, though he could still shift them to white when he chose to. "I think," Lucy said, "that this is just the beginning." Through their mental connection, Snow shared his agreement. The telepathic network was growing stronger as more albino dragons awakened to their purpose. Soon they would be able to help species communicate across vast distances, facilitate trade negotiations, and prevent conflicts before they started. But more importantly, they had proven that friendship could overcome any barrier, whether it was species, size, fear, or centuries of misunderstanding. As Lucy watched, a young Averan child approached one of the albino dragons with the same fearless curiosity that Lucy had shown weeks ago. The dragon lowered its head gently, allowing the child to pet its snout, and Lucy felt a new connection form in the telepathic network. "Snow," she said, "I think we're going to need a bigger academy." Snow's purring laughter echoed through the observation deck and through their connection. Lucy felt the joy and hope of all the albino dragons as they looked forward to a future where being different wasn't something to hide, but something to celebrate. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most valuable bridges are built not by the strongest or the smartest, but by those brave enough to extend their hand in friendship to someone who needs it most. And sometimes, that someone turns out to be exactly what the universe has been waiting for.